classroom.
So you went over to like China and did speaking events for like thousands and thousands of like students. Is that something you've ever planned? Like, don't disclose it if you've like it's something that you don't want to. You can't. But have you ever thought about doing something like that in the United States, like or like Europe, anywhere else, or is that just something that like you had an opportunity like to go to China and that's why?
I would love to. I think sort of my cultural approach would have to be very different. In China, my speech is called "You're More Than Just a Test Score," and it's about going in there because China, you have 26 million graduating seniors every year, and they're all competing for these elite top tier schools. And to do so, I mean, colleges can't take essays from everybody, so they just take one test called Gaokao. It's about 3 days, and that's the sole determinant of where these kids go to school in the future and sort of how their life shakes out or shakes up. And there's so much pressure on them to succeed and to get into a good school that you have suicide rates through the roof, especially because most siblings, at least, or most children until recently only had, themselves. They were only children. And it just, my message would be almost contrary to what they'd expect. They thought they were going to get a course on or a speech on study, 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 like it's all about the test. And I went in there as a Harvard grad and I was like, hey, there's more to life than school. There's more to life than a good job or whatever. It's about passion. But I look at so many of my friends who went to Harvard
Can I
and
ask you?
they
Oh, sorry.
they have these crazy high paying jobs. I'm like, great. You make 200, 300, 400, whatever. If you're working 80 hours a week, something boring or meaningless or something where you won't have a legacy, what's the point? Like, congrats. You can get a beach house. You'll never have time to go there or it won't have any meaning. And so I'm trying to sort of emphasize that life has to have meaning beyond just money, good fancy colleges, and that sort of thing.
How was that received over there? Because you did say like that's something that they weren't expecting. Was that something that you kind of got any negative feedback? Because like even like the schools hearing from parents, like because of how different of a like of a perspective that was than they were probably expecting to get.
I'd say 5% of parents, 10% of parents were a little disappointed. 50% didn't care. 40% were a little receptive. But if even one or two are a little bit receptive, that makes a difference. We wound up speaking to 1.2 million people in the live stream, about 20, 30,000 people in person. And, I'd get notes from students after being like, that's the first time I've heard anything like that. I think of everything I've done, like those speeches are probably making the biggest impact, more so than any TV platform I've ever had. It's, those are the kids who need to hear it. I've gotten notes from kids who are contemplating suicide because they feel like their parents want them to be a doctor and they want nothing to do with it. And their whole life, I mean, especially too, like in East Asian countries, things are just so much more demanding. And we see that infrastructure wise too. But you have kids who are told like they're not good enough unless they meet someone else's expectations. And so I try to reshape and reframe their thinking. Most of the time, it probably doesn't work, but if it works, and even 10% of the time, that's good enough for me.
Because yeah, the way you got to think about it too is it's not even necessarily you need to change the minds of the parents. It's like the fact that that kid gets that perspective at such an age where it's going to make an impact to them that they're like maybe in their head they're like I'm not going to put that kind of pressure on my kids when I have kids one day. You know what I mean? So it's like that's definitely a slow burning process too to like make that kind of change. I feel like which is
It,
it must have been a great impact.
I hope so. It's all about just planting that one little seed and hoping it sprouts. That's the goal.
Absolutely. Uh, but you do you have any plans on going back there ever, or is that especially with something with COVID that it's not going to be likely?
With there are a lot of really nice, really great people in China who I met. I think between the COVID situation, politically, some of the content of my book, I'd be reluctant to do so anytime soon. I just, I don't know. It does make me a little nervous going over there, especially like when I've had minders and stuff. It just, I don't know. The kids have asked me questions before that I've answered, and the minders will change my answers when they give to them, and I don't like that. And that sort
Do
of
you,
thing freaks me out.
do you speak Mandarin to know, like, at all, to know like that what they were changing at all, or is that something too
No,
big?
but I had a friend in the audience who spoke fluent English and Mandarin, actually works as a translator right now. But the kids would ask me questions about like, gun culture in the U.S. or should gay marriage be allowed in China, and I answer very bluntly and very honestly, and it would change my answers, and I don't like that.
Yeah, because that's like immediate censorship too. Because it's also like in their heads, if they don't know English, they're thinking like, oh, this like very educated person from another country is saying this to me.
Yeah,
So
they're attaching essentially like Matthew thinks gay marriage shouldn't be a thing, and like I not
yeah,
represent not only me but also America and Harvard at that point, whereas like I literally had said the opposite. Like it's just stuff like that freaks me out, and I don't want my name, voice, likeness, anything associated with something that I think could be pernicious to kids. And an answer like that, where I answer something very positive, very affirming, very encouraging, and it's turned into something that is the opposite. I don't want any association with that.
yeah, that is super freaky. I don't know that because I feel like that's a freaky situation to be in. Because then you can't really fight back on that at all either. Because it's like you don't obviously. I don't know. That seems like a super stressful situation, and that doesn't seem enjoyable. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I just feel like I need to get way more comfortable traveling before I go to, like, a pressure more like a that because I feel like culturally, the norms and stuff like that are so different. Like, if honestly, if I, like, offended somebody in Germany or the Netherlands because I, like, drank my beer stupidly or something like that, I don't care what they think, you know what I mean? But, like, I feel like it would come with such disrespect because it's like would be so different. I don't know. Travel like that stresses me out. I wanna go and relax and not have to worry about
Yeah,
pissing people off.
I got invited to Russia, and that was one I turned down. I was like,
Really? Even before
they
the
were just. This was last October, and I had a lot going on at the time, but also the invite just seemed sketchy. Like they couldn't provide enough information. They knew too much about me. It just everything about it seemed iffy. And it would have been nice. It would have been 4 grand to give a speech, but also like I couldn't even tell if they were legitimate or not. And I had friends who were Russian trying to look into it for me, and I was like, it's not worth it.
Yeah, especially going over to another like, especially in your situation, dude, like, that seems like, I wouldn't wanna risk that. That was probably a good call on your end. Maybe a divine intervention?
Yeah, there've been a couple times. I've had so many weird trips though. Like one time in China, I kind of got kidnapped. Another time, like
What?
yeah, it wasn't even anything government wise. It was that